everyone. Welcome back to D1011, the podcast about suburban New Jersey. This is Lo.
And Kimberly.
Yes, and last week we had Martin Schwartz on to give his thoughts on Montclair School District and what he thought about the merits of no, no. And as we are a nonpartisan show, we felt it was imperative that we present the other side. We reached out to save our Montclair schools, and today we're going to speak with Rich Reynich. This is so hard because this is a structural issue.
It is. It is a structural issue.
Hello, folks. We're back. Today, we're talking about the upcoming school funding vote in Montclair. Some people are calling it the most critical local education decision in years. I'm joined with Rich from Save Montclair School Coalition to explain what actually is on the ballot and what happens if it fails and what it means for equity and the future of Montclair schools.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, thank you for coming on, Rich. Um, for listeners who may not have followed this closely, what are the two questions on the ballot, and what does a yes, yes vote actually do?
Sure. Thank you. So Montclair schools are facing two distinct problems, and there's two questions on the ballot to address them. The first question relates to unpaid debt from previous years. So around 12 million in unpaid debt. Question one asks voters to approve a one-time tax increase to
Mm-hmm.
cover that debt.
Mm-hmm.
If the question passes, then there'd be a tax increase of a little over $1,000 on the average assessed Montclair home,
Mm-hmm.
which would be a one-time payment. That would cover the debt. If the question fails, then Montclair schools can take a loan from the state
Mm-hmm.
to cover that unpaid debt. They would have to take that loan. That loan, though, comes with a state monitor for 10 years. So Montclair School District, any final decision making on fiscal matters, which really reaches into pretty much everything a school district does, would be decided by a appointed state monitor for a period of 10 years. The district in that scenario would also have to repay the loan. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be about 1.2 million that's coming out of the state aid that Montclair receives for a
Mm-hmm.
10-year period, which would create further cuts over that decade. And then the school district also pays the salary for that monitor, sort of as an extra administrator. So that's what's at stake in question one. Question two deals with a different problem, which is a structural deficit going forward, right? So what's happened is costs of running the school district have risen much faster over the last few years
Mm-hmm.
than the 2% cap on the tax levy can accommodate, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you have healthcare costs that are growing by 10% or more, you have transportation costs that are running by 10% or more. For all school districts in New Jersey, this is a losing formula, right? Because your costs are rising. Even the teacher contracts have 3.5 or 4% raises every year, right? So
Mm-hmm.
every year to get back under that 2% cap, you've got to be cutting something. And I think the failure of the previous Montclair Schools administration was not making those tough decisions in past years.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're out of whack with a structural deficit that if we don't increase revenues to cover some of that gap, we're going to be facing the structural deficit for the next several years. So question two asks for a smaller permanent tax increase,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little over, I think it's about $450 for the average assessed Montclair home, and
Mm-hmm.
that would be a permanent increase to the tax base, right? So that would be included when you calculate the tax increases going forward.
Okay. So a lot of people, and I think it's a misinterpretation, think that voting no no avoids cuts. Um, but that's not really accurate. And I think that they feel that a no would save them like money. Um, so I'm from what I understand, a yes, yes, it is 3.6 million in cuts next year, and no, no, 10.6 million cuts next year. So is a no actually saving money if you look at it in a holistic sense.
Yeah, the difficult reality here is there's going to be cuts either way, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the district's already cut around 2.8 million in December.
Mm-hmm.
And in the best case scenario here with the yes vote, they're going to be making around 3.5 million in cuts for next year. In
Mm-hmm.
a no scenario, that is far more draconian, right? So a little over 10 million in cuts.
Mm-hmm.
And just to put it sort of in perspective, when it was 2.8 million in cuts, that was laying off 103 staff. So, kindergarten paras, guidance counselors, classroom teachers, those were pretty deep cuts across the district. In the scenario, the best case scenario in this vote, in a yes outcome, one of the schools will close in Montclair and be converted to a pre-K, right? So that will be pretty impactful.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the absolute worst case scenario, if it's a little over 10 million in cuts, we're looking at two schools closing. We're looking at class size minimums at the middle and high school level would be reset to 30. There's no detail available yet on how many staff would be let go, but just, putting it in perspective, if it was 103 for a quarter of that amount, we're looking at a pretty drastic number if we're talking about 10 million in cuts. It also, most of the extracurriculars, right? So clubs, sports, all of these things would be cut, which, results in a sort of a pay to play scenario, right? Because I think what the public schools do is they provide a baseline level of equity, right? Where services are available to all. So, I think it's there definitely is an affordability conversation around the tax increase. But then the flip side of that is if you go to a pay to play model, how are you protecting the most vulnerable students and the most vulnerable families who no longer have access to these services if they can't pay for them?
Yes, and I mean I'm just having nightmares of Los Angeles and how I went to private school. I just didn't even think that public school was a possibility. Moving here and seeing the schools and all of the all of the things they provide and the kind of advantages that your child gets if they have a well-funded school. But I'm gonna come back to that. But people are frustrated and asking like how Montclair got into this situation in the first place. Like what happened financially that created this crisis? Is it like is it just local level? Was it like a state situation? What was going on? Is it just mismanagement or what happened exactly or structural deficit?
And this has been, the crux of the fascinating debate across town, right? And I think a lot of folks are, crying out for different reasons here. And the
Mm-hmm.
answer is that there are a lot of reasons and they're not mutually exclusive, right? So I think one, as we talked about earlier, the way the school funding and the 2% cap works in New Jersey, it puts school districts in an extremely difficult position where you've got to be cutting stuff every year just to stay balanced.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not the only school district in New Jersey that's facing this right now. I think the list is up to 15, 20 different school districts that have all come out in this budget season dealing with these kind of structural deficits, right? I think the Montclair problem has been exacerbated by a previous school administration
Mm-hmm.
that at best was negligent in dealing with it, right? So our school business administrator is out. She left at the end of the last school year and has been replaced by an interim business administrator who's done a very nice job. Our
Mm-hmm.
school superintendent, we had an interim superintendent last year. We hired a great new superintendent in Ruth Turner, who's taken the helm this year.
Mm-hmm.
So they've come in and they've had to clean up a situation where a past administration just didn't deal with the problem, right? They didn't deal with the problem transparently. They didn't deal with the problem at all, right? So that's put us in a
Mm-hmm.
very difficult position, both in terms of the past unpaid debt and also, that we're out of position on this structural deficit going forward. Another problem that we have to confront is they had very poor controls and accounting practices in that prior administration. So they've had to come in now. The school district just completed their regular statutory audit. And there were, unsurprisingly, a number of findings, right? Simple, basic things like, not requiring two signers on a check, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I'm involved in the PTA at my children's school. We
Hmm.
require two signers on a check, right? So just
Yeah.
lack of budget transparency, I think, enabled the past administration to sweep some of these problems under the rug and let them mount. And then there's also the specter here of, was there potential wrongdoing, right? And I think there will be a forensic audit, right? And they will look
Hmm.
into, what happened with the previous business administrator. The district has filed a claim against her bond related to some specific shady behavior around a food services contract. So,
Hmm.
I think some folks are trying to argue of like, oh, is this a structural problem with New Jersey school funding, or is it mismanagement, or is it fraud? It's probably a combination of all of these things, right? When you get in a situation that's this bad, it's usually more than one factor that got you there, right? And
Yeah.
I think, what I would say to the people that are crying out, oh, I don't want to pay for someone else's fraud, there may have been some shady behavior here, and we will get to the bottom of that through the forensic audit, but no one stole $20 million. Right. So
Hmm.
it's not that there's no simple explanation here.
Hmm.
I, and I would also say that the school funding formula in New Jersey disadvantages Montclair as a town, right? Because we don't receive 100% of the state aid that we're supposed to receive. That number's
Hmm.
down in the 85, 83% range. We don't have a large commercial tax base like a lot of towns do, right? We don't have
Hmm.
strip malls, we don't have box stores. So more of it falls proportionally on homeowners
Okay.
residentially. And then also Montclair, there is a lot of development that's been happening in the last decade or so. What happens is Montclair gives what are called pilots to the developers as an
Yep.
enticement, right? So
Hmm.
the problem is those pilots are payments in lieu of taxes. That means that the town is getting that revenue, but the school district isn't getting anything, right? And that's, I would say it's not uncommon for it to work that way in different towns, right? But I think our town council could really help us out here by sharing some of that pilot money for the schools. And there's a lot of advocacy going on now around that. So I think in some, it's a combination of a lot of factors, some of which are things that we can influence locally, and some of which we can't, right? We can't change the school funding formula in New Jersey through this vote next week, right? So
Hmm.
there's,
Hmm.
there's certain parts of this we can control and certain parts of it we can't.
No, and I mean, I think thinking of it that way is really important. I think about some previous elections just federally, and the consequences of, well, we couldn't get it all, so now we have this situation. Um, some people are arguing that the no is a more equitable position. Um, but as I stated earlier, that seems like a very strange deduction. Montclair has a lot of working class renters who moved there specifically for the school district. And like again, what happens if this is gutted? Not only, closing schools, closing programs. I think about, yes, people kind of view like, oh, lacrosse, the Mandarin program, that's for like um upper middle class children, but everyone who lives in Montclair benefits from that.
Right.
What would you say about like the people who are trying to say that it's unfair? Like it's more equitable to gut the schools immediately. I'm not even, like I said, I'm really just looking at this. This is not me. I do not have children. So this is me just looking at it as from a economics, as a political economics perspective, view perspective.
Yeah. And I think, look, this is an election where we're faced with a series of suboptimal choices at best, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There are tough choices to be made here. I think if all of these programs are cut, right, and there's extracurriculars and there's sports, and those are great things, and they provide a lot of value to the children, right? They help develop the children. We're also talking about things here like curriculum support, world languages, class sizes, right? Things that are, you would think of as they're not extracurricular. These are things that are core educational priorities. And I think what happens is if you cut all those things from a public school system, you are now creating a pay to play model, right? So like if, your child is having trouble learning to read and you're not going to get the help from the school district anymore, well, you're going to get the help if you pay for it.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
and I do understand, there are serious affordability concerns across not just Montclair, across all of North Jersey right now, across the entire metropolitan area. Right. So I think those affordability concerns are very real. Where I come down on it, though, is those affordability concerns are going to be here and they're going to continue to march forward, whatever we do with this vote. Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
Taxes are going to continue to go up. Cost of living is going to continue to go up. We can't do anything decisively in Montclair on this March 10th vote that's going to halt the trend on the affordability issue. We can do something that is decisively going to hurt the schools for the next 10 years if we're not careful. So it comes back to, I think, you know, looking at what is actually on the ballot in this vote and what are the right choices. And to me, that's a yes, yes, because I think we need to stabilize the school funding situation. And that is something that is directly in our control with this vote.
So the a yes would somewhat stabilize the teachers, the class sizes, that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, the other thing I'll point out here is, the school district has been operating all year with this hanging over it, right? And I give so much credit to the teachers and the administrators that have been operating day to day. I have 3 children in elementary school, and when I think about what those teachers are going through and how they're holding up and putting a brave face on it and focusing on the kids, that it's really tough, right? This is their jobs, their livelihood. I think what we're starting to see in the district, though, is people are leaving for other districts, right? So you have a talent drain, right? Because people need the job security. So, one of my children lost their teacher over Christmas break. They went to another district, and I don't fault that teacher one bit for making that decision that was best for her career and her family. But it's very difficult. And I think if we are not able to stabilize the school funding situation with this vote, well, that's going to continue then with no end in sight, right? Because if every year we're facing this huge crunch and it's unclear if the town is going to support the schools or not, then we're going to lose talented educators to other districts, and then we're going to struggle to attract replacements. So I think there's a sort of, I think, moral and psychological thing here about supporting the schools and putting ourselves on solid footing. The other thing here is it's clear with this structural deficit, with transportation costs rising so much and healthcare costs rising so much, that there needs to be a re-engineering or a reimagining of how the Montclair School District operates, right? So whether that's looking at our magnet system, which has increased busing costs that are, potentially going to get cut in this vote, whether that's looking at the number of schools we have, whether that's looking at, how much we pay for out of district placements and do we want to invest and start to bring some of those services back so that we're not paying for the out of district placements. All of those conversations need to happen, but they're things that take more time than we have for next September. So, a yes, yes vote has really always been about stabilizing the current situation, just, getting us through without the most draconian cuts so that the school district can do those other things in a thoughtful way, right? So it's kind of like, there needs to be a right sizing here. The
Hmm.
question is, are we going to do this in a thoughtful, considered, smooth way, or are we going to crash land, right? 10 million in cuts is a crash landing.
Yes, it is. It is. And for people who've listened to this and they're still undecided, what would be like one thing you'd want them to kind of like know before they cast their ballot on Tuesday?
This is a difficult decision. I think we have to invest in our public schools for our children in Montclair, right? I think this is a town that's always been very proud of its public school system. That public school system is in crisis right now. And, I think a lot of folks there's been a lot of anger and frustration about how we got here. but it's not primarily about how we got here. This election is about where we go from here. Right. So I
Mhm.
think it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. I'm angry and I'm frustrated. But the right thing to do is to make the investment and make sure that we protect our public schools going forward.
Well, that's very true. Thank you so much, Rich. This Montclair's voters will ultimately decide what kind of school system they want to have, one facing manageable cuts or one facing devastating ones. So thank you for joining us and explaining the stakes to us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Wow, Rich really broke it down. I really appreciated like his perspective. Um, for me as, an economist, as a person who, is formally educated as an economist, an urban planner, um, this is so challenging because I'm very much on a macroeconomics level type of a person. And I feel like this is really stemmed from the School Funding Reform Act of 2008. And Montclair is viewed as like a wealthy district, and it results in only, getting 83% of its required funding or what it needs from state aid. Whereas Jersey City, as we kind of learn about how New Jersey works, it was viewed as a urban city. And even though it has changed, it gets like 249% of of funding. So it's much better funded than Montclair. And these numbers are from the Education Law Center and the New Jersey policy perspective. But like in my head, I'm like, I get that people are upset. I get that they're angry, but is gutting the schools like immediately gonna help here? I mean, it's like you feel like, yes, I've punished them. I've got them back for not doing their job. And I'm not saying that there wasn't any funny business going on or cronyism, but is this gonna like fix it? I mean, what do you think, Kimberly?
I I don't think that gutting the schools instantly will help anybody. I think in fact it'll hurt so many more people than it will help. Like you're talking about teachers' careers and livelihoods. You're talking about extracurricular activities as well as some base programs like world languages and things like that. You're talking about children potentially losing their para aides. Like this is a serious issue and this isn't going to impact a lot of children and a lot of teachers in the process.
And this is going to be like, and the thing is that this could be generationally damaging. It's like
Absolutely.
I totally get it, but I experienced Prop 13 in California, and you experienced living in rural New Jersey, a defunded school system, and we both know what happens when it's kind of like, oh, every family for himself.
Yeah, and that's, you know what also surprised me? I didn't realize that Montclair that seems to hold such sway over all of Essex County only has a population of 44,000 people.
Yeah.
That kind of surprised me.
Yeah, it's tiny in regards to geographical, but it's like, I mean, population, yes, but it's also in those 44,000 people are in like a little, really small area. I mean, the thing is that I really feel like, well, this is not the time to have this conversation, but Essex should be one school district. And the no, okay. And the thing about, for me is that the no could possibly bring that, but in a way, because I'm an adult and I lived in the real world, not just in academia. I realized that, oh, the dream would be no, they'll get a state monitor, and then the people will see the error of their ways, and there'll be one school district. We know that's not going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? If I wish that would happen. Like I said, we're nonpartisan. I can see the merits of both sides. I can see the pitfalls of both sides, but at the same time, what we think we would be getting with the no, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think we're
I
going to
don't think
get
so either.
justice or equity or one school district or some kind of kumbaya situation. I don't think that's going to happen. And I feel that so many people are going to get hurt. And again, this is me just, being an economist, looking at the ground, and we're not even deciding like what way or the other. You vote how you need to vote. And but there is no, there's no, I feel like it's not a binary thing. It's not like all bad, all good. It's just these are the issues and this is what's happening. So
It's a mess either way, really. Either way that Montclair decides to vote, there's going to be cutbacks and there's going to be hurt, and there's not going to be very much justice or equity going around.
that's right. So thank you all for listening. We'll be excited to talk to you folks next week. So remember to subscribe to D1011, whether it be on our Substack, our YouTube, our Spotify, our iTunes. We're so happy we've had one of our videos have gotten 18,000 views. We got 1,000 subscribers already on our Substack, and we just started it. We have 1,500 subscribers on our YouTube. And I know you're probably like, well, that's small, but I'll tell you something. We're a small operation, and we actually have a lot more people following us than people who have a lot more funding. So support us, and we will support you. You have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much for listening. We look forward to see what happens to the vote on Tuesday.